Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Navigating Adult Autism. We are here today with Heather, Dawn, Tara, Elizabeth, and Kara, and my name is Mary. And Cynthia is not here tonight. We miss her. But we are a bunch of moms with lots of opinions, lots of perspective, and a lot of experience. And tonight we're just going to continue our transportation issue and talk about a lot of maybe our non-drivers because it is a big issue and there's different options out there and sometimes with difficulty just getting that option completed. So I'm going to jump it over to Heather and talk about how you felt with Zachary turning 16 and, he is a nonverbal or profound, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, so profound is fine. He's on the profound end of the spectrum. So driving was not even an option, nothing that we prepared for. We knew that wasn't going to be an option once the time came. But I will say, for those parents in that, same road as us, one thing that we did was basically we left the state. That's what we did. So it was one of those times where I was a little bit mad at the world, I will be honest. Right. A lot of milestones can come and go. And I'm too into my own, what we need to do for Zachary at the time to really worry about it. But driving was just one of those things where you think about kids just getting their freedom. Because that's what I thought the first day I drove. I was like, oh, this is great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my parents don't even know where I am because it was... it was the 90s, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, I was frustrated and a little mad at the world. So we just decided to go, of all places, to Disney World, which sounds like a crazy kind of thing to do.
Happiest place on earth.
Yes. And we had been there once when he was really little, and it was actually magical for all three of us. So that's where we went back. We made 16 birthday T-shirts, and we spent a week at Disney World. Was it way more difficult than when he was little? Yes. There was a lot of crying. But we had some great moments too. So I was glad to kind of get out of regular life and not have to think about it. So anyway, that was our little coping mechanism. But so since he doesn't drive, it would be up to, Michael and I, his parents, to drive him wherever. I have always worked full time since before he was born. And so to be able, for him to participate in different therapies and things like that, they don't usually happen at night, he would need assistance. So we've had family members, like my parents, my dad specifically, they live an hour and a half away. He would drive quite a bit of the time, an hour and a half one way just to come and help, kind of transport. Now that he's, an adult and he has a waiver and he's got staff, they drive him during the day to the activities that we'd like for him to participate in now that he's out of high school. So, and that can be nerve-wracking. I think I would really prefer to be the one that's driving him around. Mm-hmm. So that would make me happiest. But sometimes he's got to go with other people. And so the staff, the direct support professionals that, hang with him while I'm working, they take him all over the place. And I believe it's a Class E license that they have to be able to do that. And so they have to take a little bit more, I guess an extra test to get that.
I passed it.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It's pretty doable.
There you go. So that's a little bit of reassurance. But yeah, so there's some stress about, and I think we talked about too in the previous, it's just trusting everybody. It doesn't matter whether it's a transportation company or it's an individual or whatever. If you have basically a nonverbal kid that can't communicate anything about his day, he can't tell me how safe they are, or did they just about, blow through a stop sign, or I don't get any of those reports. So it can be an anxious thing, but that's how he does it now.
you could always do one of those cams in their car and say it's required if you're going to take them.
Yeah, I
Right?
think it probably depends on the provider,
GoPro?
like a GoPro.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we use a local service provider. We're not self-directed, which I know Elizabeth is, and she might be able to, she may have more leeway in that area because I'm not sure what the rules are really for that.
Yeah, and as far as like looking, and watching, observing, I don't know, I mean, if your child has any kind of device, GPS type, if they're carrying a phone, if they have other, for those that elope and may take off, a lot of times there are devices that are on the individual. But as far as like a video, I'm not sure. I can see where providers that might get kind of tricky, although I did have an appointment today and it was about video monitoring and the waiver, the only video monitoring. You can't put a video monitoring system in a bedroom or a bathroom, but they said really anywhere else. So it might be possible, that's something we probably can kind of look up and discuss. But that would be something, you would discuss with your individual service provider. And then as Heather was saying, we use self-directed services. So that's where we have that waiver funding through the Department of Mental Health, but we are able to, we have a budget and are able to hire those, individuals to do those services. We had one wonderful young man, and he was so excited and wanted to teach Nathan all the independent skills he could. So he taught him, well, when we stop, he can get out of the car on his own. So every stoplight, every stop sign, it became a danger. So, these are things that, that we have to think about. And some things, we don't see that coming. I didn't see it coming. Yeah. But all of a sudden I'm like, why is he opening the door every time we stop? And so we had to you start using the child locks again and use those for him. So it was really interesting. Sometimes when you're excited and you're moving forward, you're actually kind of moving backwards.
Yeah. So he was taught a skill, but took it too far.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's hard. Like with your nonverbal, my son was able to tell me one time that when he was on an employment search with a provider, that they had to stop at, he named a really nice jewelry store that they had to stop at. And I said, well, why in the world were you at the jewelry store? Yeah. Well, so-and-so had to check on our ring for his girlfriend. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad.
On the clock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I empathize with you without, with Zachary not being able to tell you.
I think the level of trust, I think that's what's difficult to handle. But that's with all things. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
And you went through your little mourning period at 16, knowing that.
Yeah, I definitely did.
Yeah. That's where you went to Disney World.
College and stuff like that didn't really faze me. But I would say 16 is just one of those really big cultural moments that we all think that happens to everybody.
Right.
So when it doesn't happen, I don't know, that was one of the things that got me.
Yeah. I think, and that's another topic for later, the milestones and what got you and what not, because I can name one right now. I won't because it's not the topic for tonight, but one that really got me as well. So, Dawn, you want to speak about driving, transportation?
So my son JR again is 26. He's verbal. He's holding a competitive job, so he's making $13 an hour. Janitor for stockroom.
Yeah, I think we talked about that the last.
We did, but just to state where he's at, he has words. He can express his wants, but like Zach, it's not necessarily that he's going to tell me. And so that means I have to, go back and do a social autopsy. Yes or no questions on.
I like that.
You know what?
Social autopsy.
What?
That's a good one.
That is good.
It's in the Brenda Smith Miles book. So we were talking about, a social autopsy and
JR is very particular about what he says anyway.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So 2018, I started a new job. I like my job. I work for a CPA firm but during tax season, my job is to assemble tax returns. I have no flexibility. During those 2 months leading up to April 15th, I had to have a driver for JR if he was going to continue to work at SWI. SWI ends at 3. Everybody else in my household, by this time, Zara is gone to college. Our workday ends at 5. Steve can't. My husband can't leave. I can't leave. We have a transportation problem. So how am I going to solve this? Listening to Susie in the last podcast where the the words that really stuck in my mind was the private-public collaboration, how we need it to solve this problem. So I thought, I'll hire my own driver. JR doesn't have a waiver. I can't, if I hire support staff, it's on my dime. Don't have much money. How am I going to do this? I went to church. He was just there with his mom. Hey, Gibson, would you like to earn a little bit of money? And I think he was a junior. He may have even been a sophomore. I don't remember. Do you have a driver's license? Do you have good insurance? Have you had any accidents? And I made the assumption that I could trust him because I found him at church. Didn't really know him or his family. One thing I did right, there's several things that I did wrong, which I may or may not touch on. One thing that I did right was I had him come over to the house. I said, I'll pay you this first time. You need to come over and meet my son. That way you'll know where we live and you can meet JR. So when Susie talked about the private-public collaboration, it was like, I need to talk to Gibson. And so I asked him, if you could do it over again, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And one thing that I did wrong was I didn't keep track of the money and the trips well enough. And so at one point, I was shortchanging him. I told him I really planned it that way to give him a chance to advocate for himself, you know. He forgave me for that. And then we came up with the idea, let's give JR the responsibility. So every time Gibson transported him, you hand the cash over to him. And that was good. In one respect, JR needs to do that. He needs to have that responsibility. On the other hand, there have been times he did it with Gibson, and he's even done it like this year when he's had somebody drive him that we've hired, and we've told them we're going to pay you $15, which is cheap. Mm-hmm. JR didn't hand over the money because he said they didn't ask. Gibson said that
it's one of those little things that you have to fill in the blank.
Yeah, that you have to anticipate.
That you just assume that they know and they don't. Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Gibson said they would have sometimes arguments over, nonverbal communication, arguments over the radio. JR would just reach over, turn the radio off because he didn't like what Gibson had on. I know when I've transported JR, there have been times, and he will reach over on the steering wheel, sometimes the display on the vehicle that tells you the dashboard, well, on the dashboard, but the readout. And so to clear it, it's on the steering wheel, and he'll reach over and, it's like, JR, you can't do that.
No. So Gibson was telling you these things?
Well, this is afterwards. I interviewed him after our last recording. And then I went to, we've hired the neighbor, wonderful lady, a retired OT from Springfield Public Schools. And she has transported him on time, and she would do it for nothing. And it's like, no, Karen, we can't do this. We have to pay you. JR has to know that this costs. He has to pay you. He's never done that with her. Well, Gibson was younger than JR.
So you've paid privately most of the transportation.
Yes, okay. I've had to pay
and that's
privately.
Been a challenge.
It has been a challenge. And Kara and Mary have both, you've gone to bat for me on that. And you found some money for me. Mm-hmm. So thank you.
Well, maybe we should talk about that, Mary, about SWI and what they have to offer since she's...
Oh, were you talking about the TRIP program through Abilities First? Or is that...
And SWIFT. Both of them have contributed to our transportation problems.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and if you have an opening tomorrow, I have a dent. No.
Well, you did run into a jam a couple times, and
I did.
We were able to... And I was able to take JR, which... Because that's what it takes. You have to help each other out. You understand when a parent's in a jam and what it's like is when you're working, especially now if you were at the spa, that'd be a different story. But yeah.
And I think too, the trend here too is that this isn't a temporary issue.
Right.
This is a lifelong issue. Right. So none, unless they're driving right now and doing well, if they're not, they may not ever. So it's not just parenting 20 or early 30-year-old. It's 40 and 50. They have to go places their whole entire life.
That's right.
So,
and like Susie said, it just gets worse as they get older, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't even think of that when she started talking about that.
Yeah.
They're getting older. They have more appointments. And I'm like, wow. Right. Yeah. But go ahead, Dawn.
Yeah. One other thing that struck me, apps. Like I know for the blind community, there's an app where if they need help, they can like SOS it on an app and
Like help with transportation? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I
When
was
they're
just-
needing something?
yeah. And I was thinking, I wonder if transportation could be that. If an app could be developed so that, let's say I got Gibson from Hillcrest High School and my church. What if the A+ program in Springfield Public Schools rounded up some high school students and said, hey, here's a need. Would you be willing to drive 1 hour a week to help solve the problem? So you've got this ready pool. And I'm just thinking,
Right.
don't know how it's all going to.
Yeah. It's
Doing
either
the what
young
if.
drivers or like retired
Both.
people that
Yeah,
they,
on
they
both.
tell you to look for or search for
Yeah.
that are willing. The young drivers do make me a little nervous. I'm
They
not
make
going
me
to lie.
nervous.
But, but
If you have to, you have to.
right. But there could be some good drivers. No, absolutely. No, I've had young drivers too. I think I'll just touch on really quick SWI, which is the Springfield Workshop, sometimes known as sheltered workshops. They're around the state or every state you're in. I would assume they're called the same, maybe not. I volunteer there, sit on a couple boards there, and I'm just going to go over that if you have an adult that works at one of the sheltered workshops, most of them do provide transportation in one way or the other. I know our Marshfield location had a driver, but I think we just got Oates out there. But I'm just going to briefly explain that the staff at SWI does help the employees with disabilities that work at the workshop with transportation needs. Most of this is within the city limits, sadly. I think we've talked about that the city bus can drop them off at a bus stop, can only go so far. That's still a problem. It's still an issue that Susie talked about, how she does, 45 minutes outside the city. It's just, sometimes I just feel like that's discrimination. Like, why are you only letting a child with disability or an adult? I still call my son a child. He doesn't like that.
They're always our children.
They're always
though.
our children.
Yeah.
You know what? Anyway, Valerie has told me that when the employees need assistance with the ride, this is at the Sheltered Workshop, SWI, that they offer some services. For Oates candidates, those needing a door-to-door escort, we look at our Oates bus riders and the route that they live on. Then they have to check to see if there's even room. If the bus is full, they're placed on a waiting list. If there is room, Linda, who's in charge of all the paperwork, she actually helps them fill out all the paperwork and see if they qualify for any financial assistance they might need with that. Our employees, the employees are the ones with disabilities, can pay monthly, and SWI bills them or has their ride deducted from their paychecks. If they need an access bus, the bus that can accommodate a wheelchair, or if they are blind or hearing impaired, they can use this bus. So Access Bus tries to keep it with those qualifications. SWI does assist them with how to order their bus ride for a regular pickup, like Tuesday for, just come on Tuesdays or Thursdays or, 5 days a week. Then she said SWI then offers them the payroll deduction, or she can sell them the proper bus passes too for that service that they can keep with them. For the integrated city bus, this is also part of the SWIFT program. And the SWIFT program is something we took over for Abilities First. They wanted us to start this program. So this is how the SWIFT program works at SWI. And Val has told me that first they find their bus route. Then we ride along for 2 weeks, which is a staff member. We are on the bus at their stop and then ride until they get off. We teach them who on the bus works with them, lives near them, etc. for natural supports. We then evaluate. Can they do this by themselves? Are they comfortable? Are they too comfortable? As in, are they talking to many strangers, offering the wrong information that shouldn't be shared on a bus? So they go through that, the social skills of that. Once they pass and we feel they are safe, we arrange to meet them at their bus stop. Then we follow the bus in a car and make sure they get off at the right spot. Then we follow them home or wherever they would like to go, grandma's house or whoever they live with, for 2 more weeks to assure that they are confident in using the bus. Then SWI does continue to sell them bus tickets that fit within their budget and spot them now and again if needed. Because
That's the city bus, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I like that if they're short on funding or they don't have the money, SWI will spot them.
But that's if you work for SWI.
Yes, that's what I,
Yep.
yeah, I think I said that, right?
Yeah.
This is all SWI workshop. They also will retrain them when needed or communicate with the bus service if something is amiss or if something's gone wrong. They will start all over and retrain them. Again, they can pay for passes or they can have them payroll deducted. And I did see the little box and the little, they have it all organized, little bus with everyone's names on it and the little tickets they hand out. Swift also offers our Uber-like training so that folks can learn to use a ride service independently. After being referred by Abilities First support coordinator, the rider meets with Ginny to set up a rider's schedule. Ginny is one of the staff members at SWI. We look at many factors to give feedback. Before entering the car, do they wait for the driver to say, are you Val, for example, or are you Mary?
Right.
To, teach them that. On an Uber ride, you don't ask if they are looking for you or just get in. You let them ask for which indicates that you called the ride.
So on the Uber training, is that anybody can ask through their service coordinator for that? Or is it again tied to SWI?
It's for Swift. No, the Swift training is for any Abilities First person.
Abilities
they don't
First
have to
person.
work at SWI on this Swift program.
Okay.
So
well, that's good.
anybody could do it.
Yeah.
Was it stranger appropriate? They just go over the right questions to ask. Were topics discussed generic or did they respond appropriately to questions? Did they understand how to get inside their destination independently? Did they handle delays and or traffic or whatever was on their mind? Or, like the radio, Don.
Keep your hands to yourself.
Right. Was it stranger danger? If not, we communicate with their supporters to offer feedback. Are they a good candidate to use Uber or Lyft independently? Val did say there's a lot more to list, as you know, but this is a kind of a basic outline of how they assist their employees and or referrals for transportation training. So I think that's a great program. I'm glad they offer it. Like I said, the Oats bus and the Access bus are for employees only, but the Swift is open to not only their employees, but all clients of Abilities First. And that's called the Swift program.
And the TRIP program is still going on, correct?
So who called there? Dawn, you called Abilities First to see if the TRIP program, which I don't understand this, the TRIP program was a trial program that was still going on. Do you want to explain it, Kara? Or do you want me to? Or
yeah, I think you maybe know a little bit more. I can talk
Dawn
about
does
how
too.
it was started. I think we had maybe discussed this a little bit the last podcast on how we, were very frustrated and we met with Jen Jones.
Now Kraft. Yes.
Sorry. Jen Kraft and
We
had
love
a
you,
meeting
Jan.
with her. Yes. And met with her and then she went to the board and got some funding.
Right.
And did a pilot program. So there was about 4 or 5 of us that were in there and it was like self-directed. You would hire your own driver and you would pay them by the mileage. And then at the end of the month, you calculated all that up and they would reimburse you with a check. And now, Dawn, do you want to, I know you used it more because my daughter actually ended up going home instead of going to work. She ended up, was sent home to work. So she didn't need that program anymore. So you've used it a little bit more with JR, right?
I did. I used it 5 days a week.
Yeah.
It was about 19 miles is what I put down as for my mileage each day.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to hire Lake Gibson, if I'm paying for his round trip, then there's no payment for the morning. And I mean, that was me. I mean, it was wonderful to get the money. It was like at 55 cents, whatever the IRS reimbursement rate basically is what it was. So I think it's gone up.
Well, the TRIP program, you had to spend at least $5 each way, right? We had to at least pay someone $5.
And it capped out at $200.
Minimum, yes.
And I always, when you're going 20 miles 5 days a week.
Sure. But this was also out of frustration with transportation years ago when Kara and I just talked to Jan. Like, I think we had in our mind, we always saw the nursing home buses that went around and the access. And I thought, why can't Abilities First or someone why can't we solve this transportation issue?
Yeah.
This is, not all of our kids can ride the bus. It goes back to the covered bus stops, when I would see kids out there and clearly people with disabilities are at that bus stop and it's pouring rain. Mm-hmm. And I thought, really? And I remember carrying umbrellas in my car and handing them out to them because There's just the whole sensory issue. My son wouldn't stand out in the rain waiting for a bus. And
Why should he?
Why should he? Exactly. That's not even okay. So we went to Jan, and she's such a good listener. And so that's how that trip program started, as a trial program. I think we only had 5 parents. I think it's still going, but I'd like to get an update on that.
And we'll put that update on our website and on our blog.
Oh, yes. So that's the trip program. But the SWIFT program is good too. If any of you are Abilities First clients, and you don't have to work at the workshop, but if you need training on how to use transportation, that is an option there, and it's SWIFT. And you can call the Springfield Workshop, and I don't have their phone number right in front of me, but we'll put it on our website and on our blog.
Well, and I know we talked about OATS earlier, with SWI. I did make a phone call to OATS and gathered some information. And they're also another really good resource. And I think that they service 17 counties in this area. And you can go from county to county. I've got some pricing here, but I don't know if I can read my scribbles. Sorry, guys.
It's okay.
So make a phone call to them, and she should be able to walk you through it. They provide medical transportation and also non-medical. I think medical transportation requires 2 days notice, and then non-medical is 2 weeks notice, if at all possible. And in-town transportation, I think, is $4.
And I think it depends too, because Chase did use OATS for like a week. I was out of town, and husband and I were out of town, and he had the summer work program, and he was working at the zoo, which is like 2 miles from our house. And we had to pull it together real quick. And we did pay $11 one way.
$11 one way, okay.
But if we had done it sooner, his waiver actually would have paid for it. So there's a lot of put in before. And so I don't know if that was the last minute, let's squeeze him on the bus because mom's desperate fee, or if that was because it was to a specific spot rather than to the grocery store, to the mall, a regular stop. So I'm sure that probably impacts what it costs too.
Would you say, Elizabeth, so today I had Zachary's annual, meeting for his budget and stuff. So that would be something if I anticipated as a parent needing help with, if I have a kid with a waiver, right? That I should probably tell my service coordinator that we may need some units for transportation.
Yes, that we just couldn't pull it together fast enough.
Yeah.
And
she actually recommended that on the phone, that you really need to have your support coordinator make a referral.
Yeah.
And so, the first day he did it, his support staff, which is his sister, she had gone to the zoo with him in the morning. He did have a family member take him. And so she rode the OATS bus back with him, no charge, as a staff for the first day to make sure he was okay with getting on and everything.
But you know what? If you took an Uber, that'd be $25, if not $30.
And
plus tip, so $11 isn't quite so bad with it being last minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They worked hard. I mean, they were like, we're going to try everything we can to get it done, and they pulled it off. I was so pleased. And you're exactly right, Kara, for $11, and you know what else? I couldn't call in an Uber. He wouldn't get in a car with a stranger.
Right.
Well, there's probably training. Like I would feel more confident in the OATS process because that's their job. Like surely they've had some specialized training where with Uber, you don't know who you're going to get. And I mean, if they're even comfortable with somebody with a disability, because we know not everyone is. So
is there an aide on the OATS bus?
An age?
An aide?
I don't know if there's an aide on the bus. I know the bus driver is very
knowledgeable.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll check on that.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Or
you can't take your own aides, but I'm not 100% sure. But
we can check on that. Or if any of you listeners want to email us at, what's your email address, Tara, again? Is it sorry, put Tara on the spot there. Well, listen, I think we should know that actually.
Yes. Moms at navigatingadultautism.com.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be curious to see what other states offer in transportation. So if you want to email us, just because we've always networked and it seems like we've always tried to come up with solutions. So I'd be curious if you want to email us in other states, what kind of disability transportation you have. That would be great.
I think the advice would be just you have to ask. I mean, it feels like we've all traveled, feels like we're the first people on the road asking. But, for me, I didn't even know I could ask. We live outside of we live in Christian County, but didn't even think to know, is there something specific other than the OATS bus, right? That even work like
So-
meeting Susie was definitely an eye-opening
Yes,
experience.
absolutely. That was great information for her.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Well, another really good resource is called MoRide. Is it MoRide.com? And on that website,
MoRides with an S.
MoRides, yeah, .com, and it's got a list like Susie from last podcast. She's on there.
Okay.
She's one of the first ones because ability. Remember we talked about that egg.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then it goes through and and they have oats and it has all their websites and their
that's
contacts.
great.
And we will also have that on our website
Oh, that's great
and
information.
blog, another resource.
Because one thing you want to look at too is, finding out what are your funding sources. So, does your loved one have some type of Medicaid? There's non-emergency medical transport for those medical appointments, but each plan, each type covers something different. So really get in there and ask: is there, can I? Some of that the non-emergency medical transport is where you can get gas refunded. So if I need to take somebody up to a specialist in St. Louis, then I can get reimbursed that. And sometimes it's overnight stays. And so there's some different funding sources, as well as the waiver, looking in, what is there for that waiver. And I know with using the self-directed staff, there is not mileage that our employees are paid, but we can pay them a higher wage to help to cover that. So when we set that wage, then we kind of think, well, how much driving are they going to be doing? Are they going to be mostly at home or are most of the goals community-based, home and community-based, which most of them are going to be. So then you build that into their wage too.
I'll be darned. That's some, Elizabeth, that's good. Yeah. Did we explain waiver before in our other podcasts? Do you want to briefly talk about it?
I think we have in the transitions.
We did,
episode,
okay.
I think.
Which is, okay. Oh, yes, we did already.
But really, just asking those that work, that whether it's your service person is through the Department of Mental Health, or another state, it's going to be Department of Health and Senior Services, but asking about, is there funding here in Missouri and others, a number of other states. I don't know if it's in every state. It's called a waiver, and it is money that your loved one can qualify for, depending on, you have to apply for it. Not everybody automatically gets it. It's based on needs and supports that they do have. So, be asking questions.
Be vigilant.
Asking questions, because sometimes it's not brought up. If you're not communicating with your support coordinator, caseworker, whatever you call it in your area, you're not letting them know. Sometimes we go into those meetings and we put on a smiley face, and they don't know that we're struggling with transportation. They're hearing all the great things about this possibility of a job, and they're not understanding that you have no way to get your child there.
Right. Yes. I mean, I don't know what I'd do without my in-laws helping me. My husband helps me. Now that I'm retired, it's much easier. But yeah, I was in the same boat as everybody else. Just how do I get them there? Who can pick them up? And, listen, a lot of them don't have a big friend group that you carpool with. A lot of moms, like a lot of, typical kids have that option. Oh, they're going with the Joneses or, whatever. Right. But Tara, you did bring up a good point about Hannah. Remember her extra income that she's making. Did you want to touch on that with transportation?
Oh.
Right? No?
Remind me what I'm talking about.
Doesn't Hannah have a new job that she's
Hannah,
driving?
Well, Hannah is actually a direct support
She's
person.
a DSP, isn't she?
That's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah, with my brother-in-law.
Well, you're saying it's good money. I was just thinking that for other people or other listeners that might have kids or relatives, I think that's interesting information.
Yeah, so Hannah's my daughter, and she goes to Missouri State, and she was working at Starbucks. And my mother-in-law first said that she was having a hard time finding support staff for my brother-in-law, who's in a wheelchair and has cerebral palsy and autism. My mother-in-law thought Hannah could probably make really good money at this. And should I say how much she's making?
Yes, I think you should.
Oh my gosh, she's making a lot of money. She's making, I think, $31 an hour working with her uncle as his direct support staff. And my father-in-law puts him in her Jeep.
Okay.
And a couple times she's been on duty working when we have family dinners. So they all come out here. And he rides with her in her Jeep. And then my father-in-law then meets us, comes here, and then takes him out. But she doesn't drive as much with him. But they were having such a hard time finding staff.
Exactly.
And so I think that they're just paying so much better as a direct.
But her being family, you know, that's...
Oh, my gosh.
A direct support. She's a direct support.
Yeah. He loves her. I mean, when she was a little girl, I think he's 30, maybe 30 now. When she was a little girl, she's 21. When she was a little girl, he would push her around on his lap in the wheelchair. She just loved it. And, you know, they've been really close their whole life. And he just loves her to death. He's nonverbal, so she has learned to pretty much know exactly what he wants now, and I think we all do pretty much now. But my mother-in-law had a very hard time because she was the only one who could attend to his needs, and now with really good support staff, they can help her.
Right,
so, she's getting a very good wage. So if you are interested in being a direct support
that's what I wanted you to say, because
I know some people at the table have had trouble finding staff. And Hannah is going to be a teacher in a couple years. And she actually is having a little bit of a crisis because she probably makes more now as a support staff than she will as a teacher. So she's like, should I even, maybe I need to take a break.
Maybe I need to rethink this.
I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. But yeah.
I think that's great information. Yeah. I mean, for a lot we all need support staff. And I think.
And it's meaningful work.
It is meaningful work. You're right.
And
it pays well.
Yeah. The wage for DSP, because we use a provider, so we don't have the direct care situation, but they have also gotten paid more. Like, I know there's legislation and stuff that we've been working hard to make sure those people are getting paid, because it's a hard job, but very meaningful, and I think very rewarding.
Right.
So, and there's a lot of people that don't even know that is a job.
That's exactly right.
That's right. Yeah. In the last few years, we've gone from just paying those direct care, those direct support people, just pennies over, minimum wage. But now, and then we were just really having such a hard time finding anybody to work. Yep. And so there's been a lot of legislation. How do we get it to be where it's a more competitive wage? And it was.
And really a career.
And that's exactly it.
That's what we're hoping for, right?
Now these are career wages because they have gone up because you have somebody's life in your hands.
Yeah, you're driving them around, right?
You're doing these things, and it is meaningful. And so and families pay taxes. We've all put into this system, and it's really interesting because and when you start to think out of the box a little bit, then you start to find some of these things out. I know this last it's not even been 2 weeks, but a woman posted, we're struggling. My husband's in the hospital. We need transportation. Her husband is in the hospital, and that was her number one need. Unfortunately, he passed, and now it's just when families with significant disabilities, and all these pieces that go together that we're talking about, her mind should be somewhere else right now, but she's having to think about transportation.
Right.
I think it's survival mode, don't you think? You have to go back to the basics of life, the clothes, the shelter, the getting places.
Right.
You don't get to worry about the fun things or even the hard things that you would like to spend time, kind of working through. But you have to get those basic needs met first, and transportation is certainly one of them.
Right.
I wanted to mention one other thing. I know that I've mentioned this before, but my son Zion has a driver's license, and he actually he's a really good driver. He doesn't have great social skills, but he actually has driven other people with disabilities to their job.
I love that.
I love that so much.
Because he's really good at it. So, I mean, that's awesome. Another whole avenue of someone you might be able to find.
Oh my gosh. I might have to use them for my son.
He probably would enjoy it.
Yeah, because I think
He does work now, so it's not as often. But
Right.
We have one family that they go out of town, and their adult son works at Hy-Vee as well, and needs transportation to his job. And he's done it at least 6
Has he really?
times when they've gone out for like 2 or 3 days.
Awesome.
That's great. That just goes to show you how needed it is. It's so needed. It's such an issue. And I mean, I know with my son, we drive him everywhere, and my in-laws, like I mentioned, but we use the yellow cab the one time. And, one time they just said, oh, they, named him. Oh, we know him. And I said, okay. But then he wanted to stop using them, I think, because maybe not yellow cab, maybe it was another cab company. He really liked the guy. He talked too much.
I saw the guy talk too much.
Yeah. Isn't that the pot calling the kettle black? But I said, okay, I don't really like what he talks about, so I don't want to use that, anymore. I said, well, anyway, I talked to him about it. Like, sometimes we don't have options.
Right,
Sometimes we have to use and do things we don't want to do. So, but yeah, it's always an issue. And it's something I know Karen, and we all feel strongly about it, but I think Karen and I feel like we've just been battling this for years. And I think it's getting better, baby steps, but sometimes we get really tired of the baby steps with transportation. And I think more people need to know about it in higher places and powerful places. It is an issue and it needs to be fixed. And Elizabeth, were you going to say something?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm so glad that, that we're talking about this, because I think, families probably are relying on just who's within their home or grandparents. And I think, you guys are an example of, making a difference and making a change. And I think if we all think out of the box and we all start thinking, well, how can we do this? There's such a big push for inclusion, but how can we talk inclusion?
Make it successful.
Exactly, Dawn.
Right.
I mean, how is it going to happen if we can't get them there?
Right. Yep. Right. That's a perfectly way to end. Okay, I'm going to shoot it over to you, Tara.
Okay, you can contact us at moms@navigatingadultautism.com. You can search for our podcast on Spotify and Apple, and on our website, navigatingadultautism.com. And we now have an Instagram account, which is Navigating Adult Autism Podcast. And our Facebook page is Navigating Adult Autism Podcast as well. So
Perfect. Thank
see
you.
you later.